The opinions and experiences shared in this podcast are just that, our personal opinions and experiences, and may not reflect official standards of practice. This podcast does not take the place of professional therapy. If you are struggling with mental health, please reach out to a provider near you. The subjects discussed in this podcast may include trauma, abuse, alcohol and drug abuse, anxiety, depression, suicide, and other subjects that may cause emotional reactions. We may also use language not suitable for young ears. The purpose of this podcast is to have frank discussions about mental health in order to show people it's okay to think differently, give people power to change their own lives, and break down barriers between mental health professionals and the rest of the world. Thanks for listening.
Okay. So welcome to the Good to Hear podcast. We're going to be talking about our experiences with mental health and how we handle it. I'm your host, Melissa. I am 27.
Are you?
I'm 27.
Okay.
And I'm a pre-licensed therapist working towards my license. Been doing it for 3.5 years now. 3 years. Three, something like that.
It's been a while.
Yes. Long time. Anyway, and these are my guests.
My name is John. I am Melissa's husband. I am 29, soon to be 30. And I work in law enforcement and with the military. In the military. Not with them. But I've gone to some college. Don't have a degree. I don't know. That's really all there is about me.
All right. And?
I'm Emily. I am 27, and I am a stay-at-home mom of 3 little boys.
3 of the best boys. All right. Today, we're going to talk about anxiety. Kind of how we feel it, how we deal with it, what's the good stuff, what's the bad stuff.
What do we understand about it?
Yeah. And the goal is just to kind of talk about it in a way that makes it feel a little more normal, because anxiety is something that every human in the planet experiences, whether or not we know to call it anxiety or not. So a little bit about how I talk about anxiety with my clients is just that, like, we all experience it in some fashion. Like, anxiety is what makes us budget so that we have money for our bills. It's why we look both ways before we cross the street, because the anxious thought in your head is, what if I get hit by a car? It's why we put our seatbelt on, because the anxious thought is, what if I get in a car accident? So all of those things are anxiety. So anxiety can be kind of helpful because we put on our seatbelt and so we're safe. We budget so we can pay our bills. But it can get to a point where it's really unhealthy and unhelpful. And the way that I kind of explain how anxiety feels is like you have 2 brains and two halves of your brain. And so one half is like your rational, like it knows that your anxiety side is being ridiculous and not making any sense, but it can't quite convince you that it doesn't make sense. And then you have your anxious side that is just coming up with all these terrible things that could happen, all these terrible thoughts about what people think about you or things you think about yourself or things that could happen. And it just kind of spirals and goes crazy. Mm-hmm. And then it just kind of becomes like your anxious side and your rational side just fighting each other. And it almost feels like you've got voices in your head because they're just kind of talking back and forth at each other, which can make you feel like an absolute crazy person.
Okay. How do you want to tackle this first?
Oh, I don't know. Tell me about how you guys experience anxiety.
Well, Emily?
Yeah, now. Let's see how I experience anxiety. Well, I mean, as a mother to 3 boys, I experience it pretty often as far as, do they have everything that they need? And, like you said, I mean, it could be something as simple as budgeting to make sure that everything is met, when it's due. But then there's also the anxiety of, my husband works out of town a lot, and so I'm by myself a lot with the 3 boys, and, the anxiety of being by myself and trying to tackle day-to-day, task and, I was actually diagnosed with separation anxiety. So I don't like being by myself. So whenever I am, that's when I usually have these, the negative thoughts about, well, I'm by myself because nobody likes me, or, I'm by myself because, just...
really shitty, terrible
It is.
feeling things.
It is. It's not fun.
And things that like logically are not true.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But they settle in. And,
But they do. Yeah. And so that's why, like, I usually try to make myself, go out of, I try to constantly, talk to somebody, or, whether it's just a text message or, actually calling or whatever. I try to make sure that I don't feel alone. But I mean, it's hard. I mean, because I have 3 boys to take care of.
I'll say this. What's great is that you're at least open with it.
Yeah.
Like the sort of, let's say, issues you're dealing with. You let people around you know, so we know to reach out to you, because that can be a problem.
Yeah.
Because I know, with Melissa and I, when I'm out of town or something like that, I know that we can go, days longer than a week without speaking to each other, because my work might require me to be in odd hours where just speaking to each other is just not really.
Or like you're doing combative training all day. So
like I come home and I'm exhausted. I have to sleep. Anyways, so just too busy or too exhausted to really communicate properly. But I also know that we can do that. We can handle that sort of separation. If I knew that she needed me to call her, I can guarantee I'd be doing that. So just knowing what your partner needs or what your friends need is very valuable. Unfortunately, a lot of people, I think, try to keep that to themselves a little too much, because there's so much stigma around the idea of letting people know what you need from them.
Oh my God, yes. You need.
Right.
Because people can't read your mind, and they might interpret it wrong. So like, I'm sure you've been called clingy from time to time.
Oh yeah.
But explaining to someone like, look, I just have a little anxiety. It makes me feel like maybe you don't actually like me when you don't talk to me for days.
Yeah.
Even if it's not a long-term feeling, you may be able to rationalize it later, but you have these times where it's hard to get out of your head on that kind of stuff. So the stigma is there, but.
Well, John, how do you?
So John's really funny. A little background. John has always made fun of me and called therapy like not a real science.
No.
And it's
pseudo, maybe.
Yeah, pseudoscience. And we've had a lot of really good conversations over our 10 years together of like what it is, and I've had to like convince him that he's not 100% normal, and maybe he does struggle a little bit with this stuff. Because I obviously have anxiety. I've had anxiety since I was a kid. Well,
okay.
The earliest I can remember is like middle school, but John didn't always recognize what anxiety is, or I don't know, whatever.
I can explain this a little bit.
Yeah.
So we've been together since we were teenagers. We've known each other for a very long time, about to be 30. So over a decade together, and I've definitely shifted my thoughts on a lot of things.
He's come around to the right side.
Sort of. So early on, like when I was younger, I didn't have any education in mental awareness, like anything that other people are going through. Even the idea of like thinking about what anxiety was so foreign. But obviously through your education and being there with you while you've been going through it has allowed me to kind of explore these ideas as well. Growing up, no one talked about mental health or anything in like any sort of positive way. The only time you heard about people that needed help, it was in the negative. Yeah. Oh, that person's crazy, they're out of their mind. The best example of positive mental health awareness that I was seeing growing up was because of the war. PTSD became very prevalent in media and conversations in a non-stigmatized way.
Yes.
For as far as I could tell, even growing up, which would have been 2005 to 2009 was when I was in high school. So in that time we had been, sorry about that, in the wars for a while, and continue to be, but that was the first positive discussion of mental health awareness that I'd ever seen. Anyways, as far as that, my experience with it, I do experience some anxiety, little things to great things. Little things like I double, triple check my things I leave the house with. So like every day I go to work, I have to have certain things with me when I leave. So I will double, triple check, make sure I have it all on me or in a bag or ready to go. When I leave the house, I walk to every door in the house to make sure it's locked. Things like that. So my security and preparedness are things I am pretty anxious about.
Okay.
Other than that, I mean, I think about things that people normally stress about. Bills, or I should say anxious. I am anxious about things like bills. I let it kind of flood over me sometimes if I, let a bill surprise me.
Yeah.
Sort of thing. If I'm not keeping up with the dates and, that sort of stuff, it kind of overwhelms me sometimes. But
I think one of the most common things that people do with anxiety is catastrophize, where they take, like, one thing happens and now, like, you can just imagine this next bad thing happening and then the next bad thing happening. And now it's like, instead of just this one little thing that's happened, it's this huge spiral of
so
things.
It consumes you.
Yeah. And moms are super great at this, because I can't tell you how many times, like, I would get home just a little bit too late, past when my mom was expecting me, and she'd be calling me, "Where are you? I thought you were dead in a ditch somewhere."
Yep.
Like, that's catastrophizing.
Yep.
Or having a bill surprise you, and then suddenly you're thinking, "Oh my God, I'm going to, like, lose my house because I can't pay this." And the bill might be something small, but now you've, like, built it up in your head to be this really big thing that seems completely insurmountable. People call it, like, making a mountain out of a molehill. That's catastrophizing, because the anxiety in your brain just takes off.
right.
Yep.
So anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
How would you define it? So, like, I feel like I use anxiety and stress as synonyms a lot of the time. And, you kind of gave us a little heads up about what we'd be talking about today. And to me, when I was thinking about the difference between the stress and anxiety, and I want to get your perspective on this, I was thinking stress is something for me that happens, where anxiety is something that sticks with you.
See, that's kind of the exact same thing. I was thinking, because I was looking, like you said, the questions, and so I was asking Matthew, I was like, what do you think the difference between stress and anxiety is? And so, of course, he goes on, about what he feels. And I was like, well, to me, I feel like stress is like a physical thing that I can handle. Like, it's something that I can control.
Uh-huh.
Where the anxiety, I feel like that's the part where I can't control it.
It's that background.
Yes.
Like, it's just there.
Which, of course, my husband, he was saying, well, stress is what causes the anxiety, which, I mean, sometimes it can.
But sometimes, yeah. But I was going to say, like, it's not stressful for someone not to text you back. It causes anxiety.
Yes.
Yeah. So this is where I get a little lost on the
And
details.
I think a lot of people do, because they just assume that it's stress. And they're like, no, I'm fine. It's not anxiety. I'm just fine. I'm just a little stressed.
Well, so, like, I would assume, so, like, that I get nightmares sometimes. I don't remember these ever, but apparently they bother you at night sometimes.
And they do get worse when you're, like, stressed or worried about something.
Sure, I feel like that's probably just a manifestation of my anxieties. That I'm, whatever, not probably even ignoring, but having to deal with in that way. But yeah, nothing stressed me out while I'm sleeping. So that's got to be
No, but that's when you're
the
so
anxiety.
yes,
That's what I'm saying. Like, that would be the anxiety happening at that point, I think.
Yeah. Let me read you guys the DSM diagnostic criteria for generalized anxiety disorder. And the DSM is the diagnostic manual. So you have to have excessive anxiety and worry, and they define that as apprehensive expectation occurring more days than not for at least 6 months, about a number of events or activities, such as work or school performance. The individual finds it difficult to control the worry, and the anxiety and worry are associated with 3 or more of the following 6 symptoms. Restlessness, feeling keyed up or on edge, being easily fatigued, difficulty concentrating or mind going blank, irritability, muscle tension, and sleep disturbance. The anxiety, worry, or physical symptoms cause clinically significant distress or impairment in social, occupational, or other important areas. So you have to have that for any diagnosis. But then it's not, these symptoms can't be attributed to substance abuse or another medical disorder. So those 6 symptoms, that I think they're really important. So restlessness, feeling keyed up or on edge, like that's, yeah, like that sensation, like the other shoe's going to drop, like something's going to happen. Okay. What's coming next? Like something's going to come. Being easily fatigued. Yeah, absolutely. Because fighting in your brain is exhausting.
You know, it's funny. Sorry to interrupt. Listening to you describe these things, I feel like I do a better job of managing these symptoms, I guess you would call them, while I'm working. But when I get home,
yeah, because you're distracted.
I feel like that's when it all kind of, if any of these affect me, it'd be during that time. You know, I'm able to keep my mind off of that sort of stuff and focus at work. But I get home and I have, like you said, the downtime. I have a chance to think about stuff, and it kind of overwhelms.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So difficulty concentrating or mind going blank. You just like walk into a room and forget something, and that's really common, but it's even like it happens more often when you're dealing with anxiety. Or I don't know if you've ever experienced this, Emily, but like when you're so stressed about a thing, or like just you're thinking about it so much, and then suddenly you realize you haven't been thinking about anything at all for the last couple minutes.
Yeah.
Because your brain has just decided to go, nope.
Yep.
We're done. Yeah. It's crazy. Irritability, for sure. Again, you're trying to battle your own brain. So, and then muscle tension. So people who have anxiety have, are more likely to have shoulder pain, neck pain, headaches, and migraines.
Let's see. Yeah. I get headaches and migraines. And then I also, I clench my teeth.
Yes.
Yeah. And so
Yeah,
like
that's really
when
bad.
I can tell whenever like I'm, like the most anxious, is whenever I wake up in the morning, and then I can tell because my jaw will just hurt from all night, you know, just clenching my teeth, grinding them, like, so that's whenever I'm like, okay, Emily, like you're really like, you need to chill out.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
we need to figure something out.
Yeah, I'll notice that throughout the day too. I'll be like just thinking about something, and then like my jaw just starts hurting, and I have to force myself to relax it. And I'm like, oh Jesus, how long have I been clenching that?
Yep.
Yeah. And then sleep disturbances, trouble falling asleep, trouble staying asleep, nightmares, trouble waking up in the morning.
I still have nightmares. I think I do pretty good on sleep.
Oh, you can fall asleep anywhere, anytime, under any condition. Yeah.
Yeah.
So when did your anxiety start, Emily?
Oh, let's see. I wasn't technically diagnosed with it until I would say 2011, 2012. But I mean, honestly, I believe it started in my childhood. I just didn't know that it was anxiety. I honestly didn't know I had anxiety until they were like, hey, you have anxiety. So I mean, it started, you know, I was a teenage mother, and, you know, me and my husband, we got married right after we graduated high school, and he went off to the Marine Corps and everything. And so that's, you know, honestly, when a lot of it started was because his, you know, he joined the Marine Corps, went to school. They graduated him early to go to from his schoolhouse to deploy.
Oh, dang.
Yes. And I was already pregnant with our second child whenever
There's no reason to be anxious. Jeez.
Yeah. No. So then I was like, okay. So whenever he came home from Afghanistan, and, you know, I'm by myself with 2 kids, that's when I was like, okay, I need to go to the doctor. Like, something's not right. I'm not myself. You know,
Yeah, because he wasn't here
Yeah.
when your second was born.
No. He met Ashton when he was 5 months old. So, yeah, it was a lot. And again, I'm, you know, 19 years old.
Yeah.
Living somewhere else. I've never lived, you know, outside of Tennessee, and all of a sudden, now I'm in North Carolina with 2 kids living on a base where I don't know anybody. And yeah, it's stressful.
Yeah.
So that was, when I got technically diagnosed with having
So I think that's a
anxiety.
good example of it being both. Not only is it stressful, but it's hella anxiety producing. Like, you're in this new place, you're trying to like connect with people, and also worrying about how your husband's doing. And
Yeah. It was fun times.
Dude, how did you handle it? You made it.
I made it. I didn't handle it, the situation very well. As far as, of course, mine and my husband's relationship struggled. Granted, we're young and, newly married and everything. Our relationship definitely was a struggle when he got back. Plus, he was dealing, with his own things and from coming back from war. And so I went to therapy and got on medication, and we're still married and we're still going strong. So I guess I handled it somewhat decently, but at the time it felt like the world was ending.
Yeah.
For sure. Did you have to do like a lot of self-talk? How did what did your therapist tell you to do?
Honestly, I wish I could remember. Honestly,
that was years ago.
Yeah.
well, yeah, it was years ago, and then the therapist was actually the one who diagnosed me with separation anxiety. The naval base, they just diagnosed, Marine Corps base, naval. They just diagnosed me with depression and anxiety and told me to go to a therapist. So it was once I got to her and I did all my, tests and everything, and we sat and talked and everything, just stuff from my childhood, I think is what created the separation part, because my mother, she's been married 4 times. So going from, having this dad that, technically it's my stepdad, but he raised me and everything. And then, then they got divorced. And then my mom marries another guy and, spends 5 years or so with him. And then she got divorced. And so it's just a lot of, separating.
I think we have very similar mothers.
Yes.
Yeah. That's a lot of change to put on a
It is.
kid.
And, that's, I believe, where the separation part of my anxiety started, was just all the change and everything. And, it becomes traumatizing on a child. Mm-hmm. So, that's honestly where I think it started.
See, and I would call that adjustment disorder, not maybe separation anxiety. But
I could understand that. I don't handle
change
very well. In certain situations I can, but as far as like like I said, my husband works out of town a lot, and so me and the boys, we get on this routine and everything, and then he comes back home, and although I really want him home, just the change of the routine makes me anxious, and sometimes I get overwhelmed with it, and I lash out at my husband, not meaning to, but it's just I'm so used to doing things a certain way. And, and then we're trying to account for him, and, and he does things differently than I do. So sometimes there's a little struggle there.
Right.
Yeah. We will absolutely do a podcast on the cycle of deployment and reintegration.
Yes.
It is tough.
It's so hard. I think the biggest marker for me, looking back, that told me that I was a super anxious kid was when my mom would disagree with this, I'm sure, because my room was a wreck, but I was kind of a type A person. Like, I liked everything outside of my room to be very organized. I have had a planner for as long as I can remember. Looking back at some of the planners I saved from middle school, they're packed. They're packed full of everything. I wrote down every assignment, everything. But the biggest thing that I remember is that I always had this bag. I never went anywhere without having a bag. And what was in this bag? Everything. I had snacks, Band-Aids, a sweater, socks, because I'm always cold, a book, always had a book or two, a journal, stuff to write with, like just things that anyone might need. I wanted to have on my person.
Sounds like my van.
Yeah, it was insane. And like, I remember going to daycare and like taking my bag and my brothers calling me the crazy bag lady. Like, because I had to have the stuff with me at all times, or I felt really unsettled and really like just not okay. I was not okay if I didn't have all of these things. And all throughout high school, it was the same way. But it kind of became like a more fun thing because everyone was always hungry in high school and I always had the snacks. So I made friends that way.
There you go.
And like somebody needed a pencil. I always had pencils. So I became like the person that people could rely on. So like it wasn't always a detrimental thing. It sucked having to carry a bag around all the time. But I remember realizing that in college because I was like, God, my back hurts. I'm carrying on a stupid heavy ass bag all the time. Why am I doing this? And I was like, oh, it's because I can't fathom being without these things. But do I really need 2 books to read for fun and a whole pack of Band-Aids and an ace bandage? No, I don't. And so thus began my journey on figuring out, oh, I have anxiety. How am I going to deal with this? But, yeah. And I think my dad and I, we also handle anxiety and stress in very similar ways. I'm much more open about it now, but anytime I was stressed, I was like, nope, not stressed, and just like shut it way, way down. And like there were certain people I could open up to and talk to about it, like my family or whatever. But other than that, everyone outside of my house thought I had it all together all the time. No matter how stressed I was.
You would hear that a lot.
Yeah, how freaked out I was. Like, I always had it together. And so that became an anxious thing. And like, if I showed a little bit of weakness, then I was like, oh shit, people are going to think that I don't have it all together.
You want to keep up appearances.
Yeah. Well, because I became the person that people relied on. People knew that like, if they had a problem, they could come to me. Yeah. And I liked that. I wanted to keep that going. But it was a bad, unhealthy cycle.
I would say I can actually attest to that because as our friendship has grown and everything, now we actually talk about stuff that
the
does.
cracks.
Yes, well, I'm not gonna say it like that, but like usually, I'm the one who runs to her with my problems because I'm like, I always joke around and be like, okay, therapist, I need your help, and But, as our friendship has grown and stuff, she has started to confide in me her problems or, stuff like that. And
Concerns
I'm like, wow, like I'm not used to seeing Melissa like this.
So when I texted you the other day and I was like, I'm on the verge of fucking tears, you were like, yay.
I know. I was like, I've never seen Melissa like that. Like, I'm not yay about it because of course I don't want you to cry and, or be upset, but I'm just like,
she is normal.
she is normal. She doesn't always have it together. Like, and I mean, honestly, I don't feel like that sometimes is, you have these people who are therapists who work on, people all day long and everything. But, does anybody ever ask how you're feeling?
No.
And
Therapists need therapy.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I do go to therapy. I haven't recently, but just because it's the busy time of year for therapy. So
yeah,
there's not a whole lot of time, but
Right.
but yeah, like it is super good. I remember the first time I cried in front of Christy, and she was like,
Christy is.
oh my God. Well, a friend of ours. And she was like, oh my God, Mel, I've never seen you like this. I'm like, I cry. Okay. But no, I did a vision board when I started the job that I'm at. My boss requires everyone to make a vision board. And I got called out in a big way by another friend of mine that was working there. She looked at my vision board and she was like, Mel, you've got strength or be strong on here like 10 times. I was like, it's a value. I don't know. But yeah, it is hard. So it became like a really weird cycle of things. And I have like compartments of anxiety. There's certain things that I'm super anxious about. And there's certain things that I'm just like kind of anxious about. But I realized that I needed kind of like a mean inner voice. And it's
Trying to kick you and
Yeah, I was gonna say you do that a lot for me.
I'm the mean voice.
Yeah, but like I'm not the kind of if you tell me, oh yeah, it's totally okay, just be in your feelings, I'm gonna go, fuck no, I don't want to be in the feelings. Like I don't want this. I'm not a feelings person. But so I kind of have to like get in the habit of telling myself like, Mel, you're being an idiot. Like stop, and not in like a you suck kind of way, but like a tough love.
Yeah, just realize it.
Yeah, like hey, this is probably not what you need to be doing, and this is probably not as big as you think it is. Like chill the fuck out.
I don't know, sometimes like I'm the exact opposite. Like I'll be crying or something, and Matthew, he'll come in there and he'll be like, Emily, just stop crying. I'm like, no, I need to cry right now. Just leave me alone.
Yeah,
Both are true.
yeah. But I've realized that like that's what the kick in the pants is the kind of voice that I need to get my rational brain back in control. Because if I allow myself to feel more upset or feel more sad or more panicked, then it just goes and it like takes off into the sunset and I'm not getting it back for days. And then I just ruin my couple days.
That sucks.
Yeah. But like, I don't know. I feel like I've gotten to an okay place with it because I also accept that part of me. I had a client tell me actually that the way that they figured out how to handle their anxiety was to make it their friend. And I was like, that's brilliant because sometimes you don't like your friends and sometimes your friends do things that upset you. But you still appreciate them for something. And so for my anxiety, like I appreciate it. I am super prepared. All throughout school, I took excellent notes. Like
Graduated early.
Yeah, studying for tests wasn't really difficult because I had everything that I needed. I always leave the house with everything that I need. And well, no, I can never find my wallet, but there's
your keys.
Right. There are ways that my anxiety serves me. And so I try to focus on that. And so when I'm feeling anxious, I get more into the gear of like, okay, what is this trying to tell me? What am I not prepared for? What am I feeling unsure about? Like what's going on? And then I go from there and try to fix it instead of just going down the rabbit hole.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
But it's a lot of self-talk.
Yes.
And there are days that it's like, or whatever, weeks where I do like kind of realize that I'm coming out of a rut and I'm like, oh crap. I was like feeling really terrible those couple days. But instead of beating myself up for it and going, oh, well, you did it again. Good job. It's okay. Well, that was that.
Time to move on.
Moving on.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. It's hard though. It is very hard. But you didn't really experience it.
Didn't experience what?
Anxiety as a kid.
Oh,
Can you look back and see anything?
so
that
I've been
was
thinking. I've been listening, and I've been thinking about where I could pinpoint any kind of anxiety as a kid. I mean, as a child, it's low stress. You know, you're a kid. You're being taken care of mostly. But yes, looking back, I can pinpoint some things. So, a little background. In my family, we aren't the most, what is the word? It's not a Leave It to Beaver kind of family. It's not so perfectly formed. My birth father passed away when I was 2 years old. I have a sister who has a different father than me. And the man that I grew up with looking to as a father figure was my stepdad, who was neither one of our father. And when my father passed away when I was 2, I lost all connection to his side of the family. So I literally have never seen them I have no memory of them. And they have never come around since the funeral. So there's a part of my history that I don't know anything about. There's a part of my family I've never, in memory met. And growing up, seeing my sister have what essentially seemed to me like two full families, because she had the one that I was growing up in with my stepdad and my mom. And then she had her own father who had a wife and children. So she had like two separate, really nice foreign families, from what I could tell. And I kind of had a hard time. I struggled feeling a part of mine. To an extent. I had a different last name than everybody else in the house. My mom and I had the same name for a little while after my dad died, which she then, of course, married my stepfather and took his. but it left me as the only one of my last name in the house. So it was, I definitely felt that a lot, and I felt kind of isolated in that way. And I believe that's partially why my sister and I didn't get along as kids. I felt like she had more than she deserved, and I had less than I wanted, you know? And as far as family went, 'cause, you know, kids are petty. Kids don't have to think about it too deep. I was upset. I was jealous.
Yeah.
And I lived in that for a long time. And I didn't obviously think about it too much, as in introspectively, like, this is what's making me angry. It's just like, I was kind of an angry kid. My mom put me into anger management as a younger child, which I think may have been a little bit much, but who knows? I don't remember a whole lot about what got me in there. I know it had to do with my sister and how I was treating her, but I don't remember ever getting violent. I might have just been mean to her. So I went to therapy for a while. And all I really remember from that is talking about random stuff. And I didn't. I actually really resented it. I would be given tasks to do, like homework between sessions, and I hated it.
Yeah.
I would half-ass it. I would really do it at the llast minute and then BS it. And like, I'm sure it couldn't have been helpful for the person actually trying to figure out like how to help me.
No, it's not. Do your homework.
Well, what I'm saying is, like, I didn't want to be going in the first place. It wasn't my choice. It was something I was forced into, and I didn't take it seriously. So anyways, I say all that, like, that was something I felt pretty isolated as a kid. I feel like that kind of stuck with me as I got older and made friends. It was kind of easy to push people away because I didn't really feel like I had a strong group to belong to in the first place. It bred a lot of animosity between me and my mother growing up. Or I assume that might have been it. Maybe I was just an asshole. But in any case, I was not nice in my teenage years. I dealt with a lot of anger. And a lot more, not like simmering anger, but more like flashes of anger. And I still kind of deal with that today, where something will make me angry and I just need to just express that I'm angry.
It's a better word than explode.
And it's gone. You know, it usually is gone after, the explosion. It fizzles out.
Yeah.
Sorry.
While you're talking, I was kind of thinking about what does cause your anxiety. See if I could think of anything. But then you started talking about family. And I think family is a big source of anxiety for you. Because my family is very close. And John ended up living with me and my family for a little while when we were both in college. And my family's abnormally close.
They're awesome. They're super loving and
we'll sit
inviting.
down and like have hours long conversations.
Yes, you will.
Where you just kind of like everyone just joins together and we just talk. And we're not really talking about anything. And even now we still do that with Skype since my parents have moved. But I remember when you first got there and doors weren't a thing in my house. We always kept our doors open.
You have them.
Yeah,
but you didn't use them.
Closed doors weren't a thing. Like we all kept our doors open, and then like we just came into each other's rooms. I don't know.
Yeah, privacy has always been a big deal to me.
Yeah, but so like when we would sit down and have those conversations and stuff, like I remember you getting like, you would get antsy about 30 minutes in, and then you would get up and leave.
Yeah, I usually just took off.
Yeah. And then, like, I remember you being irritated about them. Like, why does your family talk so much?
Yeah. Well, not just that. Like, yes, you're right. I'd get kind of irritated with the constant family meetings and talks. And not like a formal, hey, we got to discuss this topic, but like everybody would get together and just spend so much time in like a single area and just talking about nothing.
Yeah, I mean, me and you would just be sitting in our room, and my brother would come in, and then my mom would come in, and then my dad would come in, and my other brother would come in, and we just hang and talk for hours.
And to me, it was
a lot.
Yeah,
it's hard. It was hard to deal with. It was. I guess I got anxious because I like being isolated to a certain extent, having my own personal space and not feeling like that's going to be overrun. Actually thinking about it, one of the things that drove the biggest wedge between me and my mother growing up was that invasion of privacy into my room. At one point she actually took my door off.
Oh, same here.
Yeah, that happened. And that was maybe when I was the most angry with her.
Yeah.
When I lost pretty much all privacy.
Yeah.
I ended up having to get, because my door's wide open. I didn't have a very large room. It's smaller than the one we're in right now. And, I ended up, during that time, I'd either like pin a sheet up so I can get dressed or go to the bathroom.
Yeah.
I just didn't feel like I had any privacy. It was one of the worst punishments she ever gave me. And it wasn't like cruel. It was just,
Yeah. You took that away. Well,
just something
'cause
I really wanted, and she took it from me.
Yeah.
It sounds like you kind of felt isolated and you felt alone, and then that like became important to you. And so when people would infringe upon that and make you feel part of it, part of something, I don't know, like
okay,
set
so
off warning signs.
I do want to say this, like, that has changed over the years.
Yeah.
I value my friends and family way more than I ever could have imagined nowadays. And like where my anxiety comes from now is the idea of losing any of that,
I can
that
understand. Yeah.
core group of people that I consider so close to as to be family. Because I mean, I never really have had, outside of my mother specifically, is the only person, and my sister halfway, like blood to me, like, I got a grandmother and stuff, but like, that I'm close to as well. But I mean, just, I've learned to make family more than just what's biological. The people I'm probably closest to right now, are not necessarily my biological family, but they are people that I consider family. And the idea of losing, because that has come up in the last few years, possibilities of people moving away, just even moving further than they are right now, even with
arguments.
dealing with changes in schedule where I don't get to see people as often as I would like to. Things like that gave me a lot of stress and a lot of anxiety, and it's silly thinking about like how much I used to not care.
And see, I would call that anxiety, not stress.
Okay, sure. But either way, it affected me pretty greatly when schedules started changing as we've gotten older, and I see people less, and just life has moved people in different directions, and I'm comfortable with happening.
Yeah.
So anyways, I would say if I had to pinpoint, when anxiety first happened, and and this is just me spitballing, is when I was a kid, sort of like where I'm talking about with the family dynamic. I feel like it was the first, at least when I'm thinking about it now, where it first started.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And it's definitely changed because, like I said,
I mean, I love your family, and I'm still not as enthusiastic about Skype calls and sitting down for hours upon hours and having privacy invaded.
but I can tell that
but it doesn't bother me as much as it used to.
I can tell that.
I do still look forward to time spent together. So.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm surprised I hadn't thought about it like that before.
That's okay.
Just now.
I mean, honestly, I was kind of thinking about this as we were talking, and just helped me kind of piece of things into my mind while I was listening to you guys. So.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're almost out of time. So.
Were there any other topics?
Yeah. Well, just one last question. What is something that you wish people understood about anxiety?
Oh. Emily?
Well, I guess that, like, sometimes I wish that they, people would be a little bit more sensitive, to it. I know sometimes, like, whenever I do have anxiety about, being away from people or something like that, I'll tell them, like, okay, hey, I think, are you mad at me? Did I do something wrong or whatever? And they'll be like, oh, you're just, you're in your head, Emily, stop thinking like that. You've done nothing wrong, or, whatever. But sometimes the way that it comes off is a little harsh, I guess.
Yeah, that's actually a good point. So how would you like it? How would you like people to do that? Because you are very upfront and open about your stuff.
I mean,
what would be a more helpful response?
It's okay not to know.
I was gonna say that's a really good question. I mean, I guess telling me that nothing's the matter, like, hey, stuff like that is fine. But like sometimes you don't have to go about, oh, you're just overthinking it, or
support is good.
Exactly.
Yeah.
To be a little more supportive than,
I mean, sorry to interrupt.
No,
but
you're fine.
So like, it sounds like what helps you is that support, having your feelings validated, things like that. Whereas Mel, I mean, you guys both have anxiety, but deal with it in different ways. She needs a kick in the pants sometimes. She needs somebody to tell her, hey, get out of your head.
You're overthinking
Yeah.
things.
Where,
I mean, yeah.
where you might need to hear what you're thinking is okay.
Yeah.
You know, and that's two separate anxieties.
So, like, I'm sorry you're
Two
feeling
different
that
solutions.
way. How
Yeah.
can I help?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, every once in a while, like my husband, whenever I have anxiety, and he'll be more of the kind of the kick in the pants that I need. But I'm used to taking that from him, where, you know, with other people, I may not be. And so whenever they come off that way, you know, it seems more, I guess, just more harsh to me than if my husband was to say it.
Well, yeah, every relationship has its own dynamics.
Yes.
That you got to respect.
Yeah. I mean, me and my husband, we've been together for 13 years. You know, we've been married for 8. So, I mean, we kind of know how each other,
Right.
you know, what, like how we work, and, you know, just some of the things that, you know, he might say that would come off as rude or something like that. But I just know him, and I'm like, okay, you know.
See, I find it so funny that we're such good friends because I feel like I have the opposite anxiety. When I spend too much time with people, I get like opposite social anxiety. I'm just like, it's too much. but I think like one of the first times we really got into stuff, you told me like you get anxious when people don't text a whole lot. And I'm pretty open about, I'm not that kind of friend. Like, I don't text people every single day.
Yeah.
There'll be like a whole month might go by and I might
Yeah.
say hello to you. I don't know. But
Yeah. You know,
but
actually,
so we're kind of very different there. Yeah, go ahead.
no, like I say, actually, I'm very similar in that way. We have that in common. Even people I'm really close with, I don't reach out to for like just conversation through text message or phone calls. The only time I usually reach out is to plan meeting up somewhere or hanging out.
I might send
things
you a
like
meme.
that. Yeah, I mean, okay, yes,
I
there's
was to say,
that.
yeah. I was to say, yeah. you're
But
pretty good
in
at
general, I don't look for small talk.
Yeah.
And I don't look to have intense discussions in anything other than face-to-face situations.
True. Okay. Yeah, I can go back and forth about that. Like,
Yeah.
I would rather have a face-to-face conversation about tense situations, but sometimes, you know, the only way, it's according to what the situation is. You know, if it's something that is really bothering me and I don't feel comfortable talking face-to-face just because I don't know how I'm going to, I guess, react, then yeah, I'll do it through a text or phone call, or Marco Polo or whatever form of, you know, social media or, I don't post stuff on Facebook though.
Do you guys feel like maybe we've gotten a little off topic of what we want to share?
Oh yeah, sorry. Well, okay, so Emily, what you wish people knew or understood about anxiety is
This is really easy to do.
Yes.
To get off
That-
topic like that.
people should be a little more kind, a little more understanding.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I mean, with knowledge, you know, that
you
can
know,
happen.
Just bouncing off what you're talking about, it's like being understanding. Also just being open and communicating people what you need.
Yes.
I think that's something really important. You know, it
It
doesn't have to
is.
be, I'm not saying like, hey guys, I need you to all fix yourselves around what I need.
No, but just letting them know, like,
just-
hey,
yeah,
I'm having these feelings.
Just to make you aware.
yeah.
Hey, I'm going through this right now. This might help if you just knew about it.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Because, I mean,
don't be afraid to let your friends and family know when you're going through something.
yeah.
You know, with anxiety or literally anything else, but like specifically, I think anxiety is something that we all deal with on a pretty regular basis. And if it gets to be overwhelming, it's okay to say so.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, you know, nobody's going to know.
Because I mean, as an example, I have days where, I'll get home from work and I had plans to do something with somebody else and I'm like, I can't. I just can't right now. I need to just decompress. I need to be alone. I need to just kind of chill, even if it's nothing that was going to be intense to do, other than just hanging out. I'm just not mentally ready to just go
Taking
hang
a
out.
walk.
Yeah.
I'm so tired.
It just, I mean, it sounds silly and it sounds unnecessary to do or say, but I think For me, it helps.
Well, no, I mean, everybody handles it differently. And honestly, I think the reason why is, I mean, about how we handle, our anxiety differently, like Melissa was saying, or you were saying, sometimes you just need that solitude and being by yourself to, collect your thoughts and get over what you're dealing with. Where, sometimes, like for me, that is how I deal with it, to escape how I'm feeling, is
Come
to be
see
around
us.
people.
Yeah.
So, I mean, everybody handles it differently.
Yeah, whatever it is you need is what I'm saying. Just communicate
exactly. So yeah, I mean, sometimes you just have to do what you got to do to get over it.
Right.
And,
I feel like we've kind of expressed pretty much the same thought. Just be willing to share and not judge.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess what I wish people would understand is that anxiety is not a bad thing. Make it your friend.
I feel like, okay, touching on that, I feel like we need to do this again at some point. And because we focused very heavily on the negatives, that on how they affect us, we did not really talk about the positives. But there are positives, which is something I think we could talk about in more length another time.
I would actually need to sit down and think of positives, because
we got kind of lost in the negatives
well, I mean,
here,
just because anytime I think of anxiety, you I guess just like the stigma is on it, it's a negative thing,
right?
And so that's more what I seem to, I guess, discuss is the negative.
Well, it's easier to think of.
Yeah. Because more often than not, anxiety feels pretty shitty. But if you can get into the habit of trying to take a step back and kind of think about, okay, what is this trying to tell me? Or how is this helping me? Even if it feels terrible,
that's what I was going to...
It's trying to tell you something.
Yeah.
There's something else going on that your body's trying to say, hey, fix this.
Yeah, not everything that feels bad is bad.
Yeah.
Just because it makes you uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean it's bad for you.
Yeah. And kind of leaning into it. There are certain things that I know I'm going to be super anxious about. And so I just radical acceptance. Okay, I'm going to be anxious about this. This is going to make me feel terrible. Taking the test I took. Tests make me a little anxious. Making sure I literally was in the room. The woman had already said, this is the test you're here for. And in my head, I was like, crap, what if I'm in the wrong room? Clearly I'm not.
Yeah.
But and I knew that going in. So when those thoughts popped up, I was like, all right, yep, there it is. Okay, we're good. We're cool. And I would just remind myself, nope, you're in the right spot. It's up there on the board. She already said that this is the right spot. It's okay. But if I had been fighting that, then I would have been really upset when those thoughts came, and I would have just been totally thrown off and probably done really poorly on my test. I don't know how I did, but leaning into it sometimes, radical acceptance, knowing that this is something that makes you super anxious. Okay, how do I help myself get through this? What are the things I need to know? What are the things I need to do? And so when those thoughts pop up, when you do get anxious like you thought you would, you're prepared for it, and you're loving yourself through it. It sounds cliche, but be nice to yourself. It's okay. Yeah.
Well, I think that was a very good discussion.
Yeah, that was awesome. We're going to do more of these. I actually wrote down 3 more things that I want to talk with you guys about just through that discussion. So,
well, good.
Yeah.
We'll have plenty of opportunities too. This is going to be a long running podcast. It's not a set number to it. So, and topics can be brought back up different ways or the same way with different people.
God, we could probably talk about this for hours.
I was say, for anybody that doesn't know, not to steal your thunder, this is Melissa's podcast, and the guest will likely be rotating. While you will see familiar faces from time to time, like mine and Emily's, it won't always be us. But you should always see Melissa.
Yeah, probably.
So,
yeah. Check us out on Instagram, Facebook, all that good stuff.
All the social medias. Good
Thanks
to hear
for joining
podcast.
us, guys.
Sorry. You want to do that again?
No.
Okay.